Dune was written and directed by Denis Villeneuve, and Denis Villeneuve is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers and directors. Denis Villeneuve also wrote and directed the indie film Incendies. He directed Prisoners, Sicario, Arrival, Enemy, and Blade Runner 2049. I love Denis Villeneuve's filmmaking, his style, his craft, everything about it. Even in action-packed films such as Sicario, there's a lot of depth in it. There's a lot of artistry involved as well. Dune is a novel adaptation based off of Frank Herbert's book series, Dune. And I never got around to watching the original Dune film. I heard it was a mediocre to bad film. I just never got around to it. It's like, what, 20, 25 years old now, maybe a bit older than that. But Dune, this Dune, I watched on HBO Max, and regardless of my opinion of it, I'm still going to go watch it in IMAX after seeing it on HBO Max and reviewing it. So, Dune, as I stated already, is a novel adaptation switched to cinema screen. And Denis Villeneuve wrote and directed this film. And from what I've gathered, this is actually the very first film that not only did Denis Villeneuve direct, but he also wrote the screenplay for ever since Incendies back in 2010. All other films between these times, he has just directed them. So Dune, like Incendies, is Denis Villeneuve's baby completely. Kind of like Zack Snyder's Justice League, where Zack Snyder's name was just listed everywhere in the production. So Dune is just entirely about the book series story through and through. Now, this is Dune Part 1 of a two-parter movie series. And for me, my personal opinion, as well as objectively speaking, Dune, the film, this film, is made, written, and directed a lot more cohesively than even reading the novel. The novel itself is not bad. I actually really enjoy the novel. It reminds me a lot of a blend of Game of Thrones and The Witcher. But it doesn't have the pristine storytelling feel as Game of Thrones. That's why I blend it with The Witcher and Game of Thrones, because it kind of has the tongue-in-cheek storytelling, but also mixed with Game of Thrones style storytelling within character to character. But each chapter section is based around one character's continuation of their storyline, which is great. I like that. But it just doesn't feel as cohesively told as Game of Thrones novels. In the film Dune, adapted from the novel, the way that Denis Villeneuve wrote, edited, and directed the film, based off of the novel, perfectly. Everything feels a lot more cohesively told in the film than it does in the novels. And I'm currently reading the novel, the full set, in one giant collector's edition book. I have about 200 pages left, so I didn't finish it yet, but I've read the entire story of Dune Part 1 already. And Denis Villeneuve, he is a master craft in just storytelling alone. He was able to blend so many diverse storylines together, not just with continued story paths, but also with dream sequences interwoven into action sequences. And it all just feels so epic, breathtaking, and beautiful. Honestly, Dune is a lot more put together and a better film as a whole than Blade Runner 2049. Where Blade Runner 2049, every other sequence, you could sure say they were just dabbling in visual artistry. Sure, I'll give you that one. I love Blade Runner 2049. I love the storytelling of it. But in Dune, everything made for the film Dune by Denis Villeneuve is necessary. There's not a single moment in Dune where you stop and you call it pretentious filmmaking or anything, because it all fits and blends together cohesively and correctly. Dune is part one, but honestly, it's its own full-length film of a full-length story in its own telling. And the acting is superb. Like I said, Denis Villeneuve, everything that he handled himself for Dune, masterfully done. The writing, exceptional. The cinematography, the score, everything just looks, feels, and sounds beautiful. I have a couple gripes about this iteration of Dune, though. The first gripe, the intro, the first 20 minutes. Now, this is not a knock on the film itself. This is basically a knock on the source material. Because the source material is so scattershot in its storytelling, the intro in the film, because of how accurate it portrays the novel story, it feels like it has the 2016 Suicide Squad syndrome, wherein it feels like it has 3 different intros just kind of continuing after the one before it. It doesn't really pick up until about 20 minutes into the film. Then you start feeling like you're actually continuing the story, where things start being put together better. And that, again, that's not a knock on the film. The story from the source material is built like that, at least in the intro. That's not a knock on the film, that's a knock on the story and the storytelling from the source material. I have to make that abundantly clear. The second gripe I have with the film Dune, and this does have to do with the actual film, this one's less of a gripe as the first one, but everybody that has been following my YouTube reviewing films, they know that I love one-shot sequences, especially in action sequences. And usually Denis Villeneuve is really good at doing this. But in Dune, the film, there are a lot of action sequences where he replaces one-shot sequences with quick shots. And I'm okay with them every now and again, as long as they're edited and made cohesively. But I really don't feel like the action sequences that had the quick shots made too much sense where they were placed. There's an action sequence about halfway through the film that's beautifully shot and beautifully done, 10 out of 10, and it's basically everything being blown up, and it follows basically each character showing what their story is within the blow up scene, the explosions and everything. That is done very well. It's more so the intimate one-on-one action sequences that I'm worried about. The quick shots just don't make a whole lot of sense to me where these were implemented. And maybe it has to do just with Denis Villeneuve and the cameramen. Maybe they're not too familiar with quick shot sequences, but it just feels like the quick shots were put in incorrect places. I don't know. They just felt jarring to me. I feel like, especially around the end, there's an action sequence where there are a couple quick shots. I just feel like that whole scene could have been a panned off one-shot sequence with a couple facial shots whenever somebody's talking or thinking or whatever, get some emotional reaction shots out of them. And I feel like that would have made it feel more cohesively done. Otherwise, this is an exceptional film. I will say this is not an extremely perfect film, as already aforementioned. But I will say Dune in 2021 is hands down one of the best films of 2021, if not the best film so far and by far. The reason being, most films this year and even last year have been utter garbage. Set aside a couple hits, like The Suicide Squad, which had its own flaws. Definitely inferior to this film, but it was a good film nonetheless. But Dune, overall for me, and I do have to preface this as well, all of the reviewers, like 90% of the reviewers out there, the official reviewers that actually get paid and have their marks on every website that gave it a 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. You know, before this film released, a lot of them were giving it 10 out of 10s. And then some of them were trying to get all racist and say how it relies on white hero tropes. Racism in 2021, am I right? But honestly, with those remarks, they gave it a 10 out of 10, and then they added those remarks, and I was like, wow, dead set, I am going to see this film at least twice. Once on HBO Max for the review, once in IMAX for the full visual experience. Honestly, I'm going to purchase this film in 4K. And I honestly do not purchase 4K films anymore because I see everything in theaters, in cinemas. But I am definitely making an exception for Dune. Dune is a 4K, 8K, IMAX experience. If you don't like the story, that's fine. You get a visual experience out of it, at the very least. It is epically told. It is very well put together. It's very well written. It looks beautiful. Denis Villeneuve knows how to make films. Maybe not quick shot action sequence scenarios, but he makes excellent stories and films. Overall for me, because of the little bit of gripes that I did have to dish out after watching Dune, and it has nothing to do with it being just part one. Okay, I'm not IGN, where at the very beginning, Dune literally starts by saying Dune part one, and then IGN is 7 out of 10, it's an unfinished story. Okay, that's not why I'm griping on this film. I'm griping on this film just as an artist in general. I love cinema. I love movies. I love film that actually work. Kind of like Billy Walsh in Entourage when he makes the statement, I don't make movies, I make films. That's kind of me, although it's also a little pretentious. But overall for me, Dune is an exceptional film. Needs to be enjoyed, at least for the visual quality. Alone the visual quality and even the score, which immerses you even more than the visuals, 10 out of 10. Dune overall, everything included, 9.5 out of 10. I was thinking a 9, but I really enjoy this film. I really enjoy the book. I really enjoyed Denis Villeneuve's films. I really enjoyed the fact that he was very accurately depicting this from the source material. So Dune is a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you.